Hey guys, welcome back. It's bourbon burner time. Time to cook up something tasty with bourbon. Hopefully it's tasty. But in the interest of time, I'm going to keep this really short. Go on ahead and hit the like and subscribe right now because this is going to be good. All right, welcome back to the kitchen. We're gonna shoot most everything from in here because that's where all the action happens. I have two New York strip steaks that have similar marbling. Again, this is shot in VR180. If something's out of frame, grab your mouse, grab the screen, scroll around, up, down, however you want to place it, because I have to shoot in this 360 radius. So we're going to prep these steaks for sous vide. If you haven't watched the video, I did do a how-to sous vide video earlier. I'm not going to walk through every single step, but these have been sitting out here for about 20 minutes, and I always recommend that you set your meat out for a little bit to help it come up kind of to temp. It helps the seasoning stick better. So what we're going to do here is just salt, pepper. So I'm going to put a little salt on here. And I'm going to grab a little garlic powder and we're going to dust them with the garlic powder and then pepper. And I always like using fresh ground. It just, the flavors pop better. And then once I get my seasonings on here, I kind of press it in so it doesn't just fall off when I flip them. All right. Then I'm going to grab a fork so that I can flip them over. All right. And they're still laying in the grocery store packaging that I bought them in, but that's fine. A good little generous amount of seasonings. These are pretty thick. The thinner steaks, you probably want to put a little less on. These are thick enough. And it doesn't matter which operation goes in which order, as long as you get them all on there. It's a good dusting. All right, now press. Okay. Rinse that off. Now we're going to use this sealer because in order to sous vide, we have to have them in a sealed bag. So let me turn this thing on. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull out. Now I'm going to have to do two separate ones. So I'm going to pull out just enough to fit one steak in because I'm going to do them different. So the first thing I want to do is set it to seal. Seal one end of this. And once I get that end sealed, I'll leave this end open until I get the steak in. Pretty simple stuff. It's common sense. All right, that one's sealed. Let's pull out about that much for the next one. That ought to work. Now you want to leave enough room in here where when your steak is in and it fills the bag up, it doesn't take up too much room where you can't get it back in the machine. So it has to be a little longer than what you may think you need. All right, now that we have a seal on one end of these, we are going to get the steaks in, and I will show you the step where I'm going to put the bourbon on. There's two things about sous vide. One, you have to plan ahead a little bit because it takes a few hours in the sous vide, but unlike marinating steaks, you don't have to start a day ahead of time. These bags will push the seasonings into the steak, and so you don't have to worry about marinating them overnight. So let me go ahead and get one steak in. I'm not sure which one is going to be the bourbon and which one's not at this point. So I'm going to get it in there, and I'm going to turn it so that it goes this way. And that's going to leave me plenty of room down here to get it in the sealer to seal it off. All right, now then, there's one. This bag has a smooth side and a rough side. I always put the smooth side down so that when I put the steak in and move it around, it doesn't rake the seasoning off of it. So I try to go on the smooth side until I get it turned where I need it. All right, now that these are in the bags, there's a couple of more steps that we need to do, and this is where I'm going to put the bourbon on and all that. All right, we're ready to continue now with finishing these off to get them ready to go into the sous vide. I have my benchmark bourbon. Again, this is McAfee Old No. 8 brand, McAfee's Benchmark, distilled and bottled by Buffalo Trace. Good base bourbon notes. We're gonna cook it out anyway. I'm not gonna use a fancy smancy bourbon. The other thing I have here is just butter. This is unsalted butter. What I like to do is cut a little pat, and depending on how thick you get it. So I'm gonna you can cut it in half, and then I'm gonna put one over one side, just like that, and the other one on the other one, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. But for this, I'm just getting them ready. Now, for both steaks, I'm going to do the Worcestershire sauce, but only one of them am I gonna do the bourbon. Now the Worcestershire is easy. You just kind of shake it in there, get a few dabs on it, and it will spread around. Okay, when it seals down, all this will spread out. Now, the top of the Benchmark does not have a spout on it like that, and I'm going to do this steak here in with bourbon, and so I have a turkey baster here. I got a little bourbon in here. Now, a few pretty good little drops here. I'm just gonna sprinkle them over the top. Good. Now, what I'm gonna do is flip them over. Okay. Then, another pat. Butter, cut that in half. All right, and again, I'm going to put one on this steak, and that will just spread all out in there as it cooks in the sous vide. It just gives it a good rich flavor. All right. Now, again, a couple of dashes of Worcestershire, not too much. Don't go crazy with this stuff. Just a couple of dashes. Okay. Now, I've never tried this, so we're trying it together with the bourbon here. All right. Got enough on there. Just go ahead and squish this over it. All right. So now we have a bourbon infused one here and non-bourbon here. So all we have left to do is seal these off and get the sous vide ready. All right, and you can see how that liquid is spread all around in there. It is really infused in this steak. So this bats of butter will melt out as it sous vides and spread, but this is it, and this is going to drop down in that warm water. Let me seal this one off. All right, and here's the one with the bourbon. Looks the same as the other one, but this is sealed off. You can see it's all pressed out. There's no air left in it. So now all there is to do is to get the sous vide ready, and we'll do that now. All right, so I got the vacuum sealer put away, and I have my sous vide bucket out. This is a Rubbermaid 12 quart bucket, and they make these neoprene sleeves that you can buy, and that just goes around the outside. It kind of helps hold the heat in on it. And all you do with this, and I have a Wankel W-A-N-C-L-E sous vide or immersion circulator, and I put 10 quarts of water in here, and when I put this thing in, it goes right to the max line. So that's kind of what you need. Now I'm going to plug it in, and we're going to get our temp set on it, because I sous vide a lot of stuff, so I'll have to make sure that's a good temp. Now I just want to make sure the time, oops, went up on my temp. It switches back and forth. Let me go back down. I like to set this about 114 internal temp. 114, go to time, and 3 hours on the time. So we're gonna cook these steaks because they're kind of thick. We're gonna cook them for 3 hours at 114 degrees in the water, and that will slowly bring these up to temp. You cannot overcook in a sous vide. The only way you can overcook in a sous vide is if you left these things in there for 6 or 7 hours or longer. They would kind of turn to mush after a while, but you have a huge forgiving window for where you can pull these out. But I've done this a bunch of times. This is less than an inch thick. It's about a 3/4 inch thick. Probably really only needs about 2.5 hours, but I just go 3 to make sure. And then once these come out, we'll reverse sear them, but we're not gonna put a lot on them because I wanna preserve the bourbon flavor. The other thing I did, because I didn't trust, because these steaks are very similar, so I got my little trusty marker here, and I put a B on the one that has the bourbon in it. So we'll know which one is which. So we're gonna let this come up to temp, and then we'll get these things seated in there, and then it's just let it go. All right, we're almost up to temp on this thing. You can see now we're at 110, almost 111. It will pre-beep when you're supposed to put these in. These have been sitting out resting. They're at just a cool temperature right now. You don't want to put cold steak straight from the refrigerator or any meat into a sous vide. You'll cool your water off. So you want to have them rest out for at least 20 to 30 minutes before you put them in. It can go longer. I mean, they can sit on the counter for a while. So these have been out here. You can see they're still sealed off, watertight, airtight. I do have, there's my pre-beep. I'm going to start loading these things in. I have some chip clips here. So I'm going to put one in, make sure it's fully submerged, and then put the clip on, and that will hold it in place. The bourbon one goes in. The pre-beep, what that allows, and that water's pretty warm, what that allows is for the steaks to cool the water off just slightly, and then it'll bring it back up to 114. Once it gets to 114 now, it'll start timing the 3 hours. I'm not gonna film the rest of this in here. I'm gonna take you back to the studio, but basically what I'm gonna do with these is what I did with the lamb, and just sear them. And it's called a reverse sear because they're already cooked. So typically when you're gonna sear something, you're trying to seal in the juices. These things are amazingly juicy cooked in sous vide. So basically what you're doing is you're cooking it first, and then you're putting a sear on it, mostly for presentation purposes. They're perfectly edible when they come out of here. They're just great. They're just, you know, on the outside. So you want a good presentation, and you want a little bit of a char on it. And I will baste them in butter just a little bit once I flip them. Take them off, let them rest, and then I'll meet you back in the studio and we'll give these things a try. Oh man, I wish you could smell this right here. Okay, so it was just shy of 3 hours on the sous vide. I pulled it out a little bit sooner than that. The bourbon one's on this side. The non-bourbon one is over here on this side. So we're gonna try the control first. And I can tell you, I have a preteen and a teen boys in the house, and they're wanting some of this steak. Now, before we get into tasting them, after I pulled them out of the sous vide, I cut the bags open. Of course, they were gray before I seared them. I put a little bit of olive oil with about a fourth of a stick of butter or something in there to let it melt out. Again, the reason I use the olive oil is so the milk fat, so the butter won't burn in the pan. And then I put the first steak in, about a minute sear on one side, flip it over in the hot pan, let it sear the other side. And while it's searing that side, I baste it a little bit with the butter, tilt the pan, take a spoon, just cover it, and then let it sit there and sear, pull it out, let it rest, do the other steak. So these are fresh and hot, glistening, and wow. Oh, look at that. Okay, so control steak, no bourbon. I'm just going to cut into the tip end toward, of the New York strip. And let's look at the color on this. Oh, perfect. Yep, I'm just going to cut a little strip off of it right here. All right, so this is, man, they are juicy. Look at that. That is a perfect medium rare right there. Now, I did not, the only thing I normally do when I cook steaks is I put rosemary in with the butter, but I didn't want to do anything that's going to change the, hide the flavor, because I really want to see. This is the no bourbon. Dang, that is so good. So tender in the sous vide. Juicy, just glistening. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing on this one. I'm just going to come up a little ways from the tip, get the same cut of meat off of both. Okay, and again, perfect, same color, same everything. Now, did the bourbon make a difference at all? Don't know. Oh my gosh, it did. It made a huge difference. Just a few drops across that. Oh, wow. I will put a recipe down in the bottom. There's not much to this. It's just salt, pepper, garlic powder, a couple of dashes of Worcestershire, and then a few drops of bourbon on each side. A little bit in the baster. Just drizzle it across the top. And then when you vacuum seal it, it pushes those flavors down in there. I have to have one more hit off this because, they're identical, except for that one just had some bourbon on it. And it is such a deep flavor that comes out. It is a earthy, woody flavor in the meat. That's fantastic. If I didn't know any better, that would be a really, really good steak. But my gosh, there is just this other flavor to this. Fantastic. Fantastic. I wish you could taste this. So, just a couple of dashes of Worcestershire, a couple of dribbles of bourbon on there, seal it down, sous vide, go for it. You can get, and again, I did the how to sous vide video, and I put the links to all of the material, like the bucket, the neoprene sleeve, and the Wankel immersion circulator and all is in that other video. So go back and look at that one. And then this is actually how you do it. My gosh, I haven't struck out on bourbon once yet with this series. Now, I will say with the bacon, bourbon without candied bacon, not as good. It makes the bacon taste more like a jerky, but with the sugar, oh my gosh, it was so good. The lamb was fantastic. Now, I didn't do the lamb, I did the mushrooms, but this is amazing. And the brats were really, really good too. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. As always, please like and subscribe. Hit the bell down there for notifications. Share me out, and I promise I'll keep making you these videos.